Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. This episode is sponsored by Rimmel Greenhouse Systems, makers of quality greenhouse structures. Whether you're just getting started or buying your 10th tunnel, Rimmel has a structure to fit your needs. I've purchased and grown in Rimmel houses and would recommend them to everyone. Hey, Thriving Farmers, Michael Kilpatrick here with yet another episode of the Thriving Farmer Podcast. And today my guest is Aaron Bradley. Aaron is a fifth-generation farmer and the co-owner of Colfax Creek Farm and Colfax Creek Meat Company. He's passionate about making meaningful change to both food systems and farming systems by learning beside of and educating both consumers and farmers. Welcome to the podcast, Aaron.
Thank you, Michael. Great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Now, you're a fifth generation farmer, so share a little bit. Did you grow up on the farm? Was it always in your part of your who you were?
I did grow up on the farm, and it was kind of typical for some where on a fifth generation farm, you had the first and second generation farmers that were doing a lot on it. My grandmother was third generation, and she was in the generation that was really told in agriculture to get big or get out. And so, you know, of her generation and my father's generation, it was kind of the norm at that point to still have something to do with the farm, but to really be focused more on a town job and find a more viable career path at that time. Everything was becoming more centralized, and so you were seeing folks leave the farm and not really look at that as a potential career path, but going and finding work elsewhere and then coming back and still doing enough on the farm to keep it going, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So it was just kind of like we had the land, we were going to make sure something happened, but it wasn't the income.
Correct.
And then did your parents come back to the farm, or were they still off farm?
So my father worked on the farm until he was probably around age 20, something like that. And my grandfather had a car accident, and was told that he'd never be able to drive a tractor again, never be able to really do the farm work. And my uncle and my father were the two heirs at that point that would have been in a position to take over the farming business. And I don't know that either one of them really had the interest or the opportunity to be able to do that. And so that's when they kind of dispersed everything. It was apple orchards up to that point. And they kind of got rid of everything. Started focusing more on cattle production, just cow-calf stuff, maybe buying some small stockers and wait till them at an auction and taking them back. Nothing really, nothing that you would look at as just a really viable enterprise that you would say, hey, this is something we're going to try to scale or grow. It's really just something that they had going. So, and then when did you decide to come back to the farm? I always tried to do something. You know, growing up as a kid, there it was you in a sense take it for granted because you don't really realize, you know, it's just home. It's the barn's just the barn, and the pastures are just the pastures, and you know, you kind of realize as you get a little bit older, you know, how blessed you are to grow up into something like that. And so as I got out of high school, and you know, I did some construction jobs and did a few other things, and I'd always try to come back to the farm. And my grandma would kind of run me off and be like, "You can't make any money doing this. You need to go get a real job, and you need to go find something that you can provide for your family with." Because you know that was a lot of her experience, and of seeing financial hardships in the agricultural industry, and not necessarily at that time having the opportunity to be able to direct market product like we have now. So I would always try to go back, but you know, I kind of meet a dead end on any of the enterprises that I would try to start there, and they were small, and I wasn't necessarily serious about it at the time. I thought I wanted to do it and enjoyed it, and nobody else was doing too much about it. But in 2014, when my wife and I got married, you know, I started really thinking about the future and and the career path that I wanted to pursue. I had deep ties to agriculture and really wanted to put myself in a position where I was prioritizing the family life that we would have, as opposed to just saying, "Hey, I'm going to find a career path where I can make as much money as I possibly can." And so I really started trying to look at it as how do I make an actual business out of this? What enterprises are there available to me? And, what am I good at? What's practical for me to do this? And so in 2014, we really rolled up our sleeves and said, we're either going to try either way. We're going to make something of it, or we're going to try until we fail. And we've been at it ever since.
And so now are you full-time on the farm?
Yes, my wife and I are both full-time on the farm. We were fortunate to both have career paths off of the farm that allowed us to spend a lot of time on farm, to build enterprises, to put some infrastructure in, to try to get the ball rolling. I worked full-time in the fire service, and so it's kind of like a long hour but fewer days schedule. And she was an elementary educator, and so they say you have summers off. Her days would end up a little bit shorter than 5 o'clock typically. So there was still some time to work in the evenings. Weekends were off, and you get a pretty substantial amount of your summer off to be able to work on building these enterprises and building a business. So I think we were really, really fortunate to have those schedules that allowed us to have the income from firefighting and from teaching, but also have a flexible enough schedule that we were able to build a business in the meantime.
Yeah, because neither of those are like huge money jobs, but they're consistent. And I think both of them probably came with insurance. So that was probably able to give you that transition period.
Yeah. You're definitely not bankrolling in those professions by any means.
Yeah.
But it is enough that you've got secure money coming in. Your cash flow is good, and you can take money. And we were really frugal and lived really simply, and we still do. And we were able to buy what we needed and put the rest into the business. And so, yeah, it was a somewhat unique opportunity for us.
And I think the thing to look at too is that now with your land, was that something you're able to rent it from your family, or are you in the process of buying it? How is that working? Because I know land is obviously one of the most expensive parts of starting a farm.
So we farmed on my family's land for several years. And, we started realizing after we had done it for a while, we started really crunching numbers and figuring that the acreage that we would have available to us, we wouldn't be able to support ourselves on livestock farming with that acreage and make a full-time career out of it and grow like we wanted to. Gotcha. My family's land's it's a pretty decent sized piece of property. There's enough pasture there if you had access to the whole thing, but there's others involved with that too. That land is really the only farmland in that area, and so there was no real potential to be able to expand out and lease other pasture or hayland. And so we started finding other properties that we could lease, but with development pressure in the area, there's a lot of other types of farming in this area that make a lot more money, specifically equestrian farming. And so landowners are a lot more attracted to talking with somebody that can pay them exponentially more to maybe board horses there, or do some training and lessons and lease their property out for that than for livestock production. And so that put us at a disadvantage. We did that for a couple of years. We had some folks that they didn't need the money for the lease, so they were willing to turn their head toward us and give us an opportunity to expand our operation and to really get our business going. But we looked for a long time, and we tried to get really creative. We were trying to find any and every way that we could just to find a piece of land. And we were spinning our wheels for a while while we were doing it. Weren't very efficient. We weren't making money, but we knew if we could find our own land and have the freedom to run our enterprises how we felt would be best, that would create an opportunity for us to really grow our business.
Mm-hmm.
And so in 2018, we found in a neighboring county, we found a farm that had been sitting for quite a while. I tell people it's kind of like the 5-year, 10-year, 20-year effect, where the house had sat for about 5 years.
Mm.
The surrounding buildings, there was like 12 barns on this property.
Wow.
Some of them are just little equipment sheds, and I'm counting like a corn crib as a structure. So 12 total structures on the property. But the further out that you went, it was just completely overgrown. What was once probably very pristine pasture was just overgrown with pine saplings and sweet gum saplings. And so not too many people were attracted to the property because they weren't looking at it as an investment into an agricultural business. They were looking at, hey, can I buy this? And if they were farming, they were looking at something that they could maybe cut hay off of or just turn some cows out. And, we looked at it. Swine is one of our bigger enterprises, our pastured pork program. So overgrown land like that's a great opportunity to be able to turn hogs out and turn a profit in the meantime. So we weren't afraid of it, and saw the opportunity here that a lot of other folks didn't see. And so it was advantageous for us having a different viewpoint and a different approach to the purchase of the property than it would have been for a lot of other folks, because we found the value that a lot of other people wouldn't have seen.
Mm-hmm. So you were able to make the calculations that, hey, we can pay X for this because we know the value of this for our operation.
Yeah. And having stuff that was overgrown, the fence lines were a little run down, and the house, we had to come in and do a pretty decent remodel on the house. That's a thing, I've kind of bought tools and tried to learn different skills throughout my life. And so I can swing a hammer and, fix a couple things up. I don't know that we could have afforded to have paid people to come in and had contractors do it. But between being able to do a lot of the work ourselves and knowing what we could do with this acreage, we saw opportunity there. The other thing is with the entire cleanup, between my family's land or the leased property that we had been on, both of those farms had sat somewhat idle for maybe a decade. My family's land, they really got out of heavy cattle production and moved to a lot of goats. And so some of the things that had grown up in the pasture, some of the fence lines, things like that, the more time that passed with my family, the smaller the acreage that was in their actual production guide. And so when we started using my family's land, it was kind of, hey, this is the stuff that nobody's using this. It's out there. It's grown up. We had rolled up our sleeves and cleaned up a couple of farms before we purchased our own farm. And so we weren't intimidated by that, and had seen the before and after and been a part of that process a couple of times. So it put us in a position that a lot of people would probably have been intimidated by, and rightfully so. But we had been there, and we're pretty stubborn, and said, we've gone this far. We've got this, and we've spun our wheels for a couple of years looking for something like this. Here it is. The only thing that stands between us having what we want here and where we're at now is a lot of hard work. So if we're willing to do that, then we can, put ourselves in a position that we can both potentially farm full time and raise a family here. And that's one of the biggest things that we look at as how we measure success in our business.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Go back there. What's the biggest thing you measure success with?
Family, being able to be here, the quality of life. That's a huge benchmark that when we started farming, just a few short years ago, I looked at that and I was, man, that's possible. I'd be handed a farming business, or you got to have, some type of angel investor or something like that to be able to get to where you can, farm with your spouse on the farm and raise a family there and be able to support your way of life. So for us to be able to do that, that's like, man, we're just, it's awesome. It's awesome. That's a huge measure of success for us.
Mm. And now when you were you looking for farms, what characteristics were important for you?
Well, when we first started looking, I'd made up my mind. I said, we're going to be able to find either, if we find any acreage, it's not going to be any open land. And vice versa. If we find open pasture, it's not going to have, there's not going to be many acres with it. There's probably not going to be any infrastructure on anything that we can afford. So we were really just kind of looking for opportunity and willing to build our business around what we were able to find. I think staying dynamic is a really important aspect in becoming successful in farming, especially for young farmers. So we were willing to somewhat build our enterprises around whatever property we could find. With this property, it was, like I said, it was completely overgrown. It had sat here for quite a while. It did help that the property, when we were able to purchase it, had recently been put in a court-appointed executor of a state's hands. And so they didn't necessarily have financial interest in what it sold for. They didn't have ties to it. It was on their desk. We were able to come in and make an offer, and that just took one thing off their desk. They didn't make more money or less money either way with it.
Yes,
so
they were a flat rate executor.
Yeah, that was pretty helpful. It was timing was certainly of the essence there. But we were, to answer your question, we were really just at the point that we bought our farm, really just looking for anything that we could find, and this has a house and has a well and fenced pasture and the barns and things like that. I saw these barns, and the realtor was telling us, they were like, I can get you some numbers of folks that have some excavators, and they can come in and probably tear a lot of this stuff down for you. And in my mind, I'm like, man, these farms that I've been leasing have no infrastructure as far as buildings and being able to keep materials dry. And, we're out there with tarps and anything that we can find.
Yeah. Cover space is such a premium.
It is extremely valuable. So all the things that people found as degrading to the property value here, we looked at with a viewpoint of, this adds value to everything that we're trying to do. This puts us so much further ahead with our own business, and is more than we ever thought that we would be able to afford or to end up with, especially so soon. Very cool. It's all a blessing.
Yeah. All right. So what was the first thing when you got on the farm that you started? What was the first changes you made?
So we got into the house. That was the biggest thing. We were traveling about 25 minutes in one direction from where we lived to get to the farm property that we were leasing at the time. And again, we didn't have a lot of infrastructure there. So for example, if we forgot something that we needed, a tool or any of those things, and that can be easy to do, you're driving an hour, sometimes an hour and 15 minutes before you ever really get anything done at the farm. If you realize once you got to the farm, I forgot this, now I got to drive back, and then you got to drive back over to the farm. So we really prioritize living on the farm. And so we started working on the house and doing things. And I told Nicole, my wife, I said, darling, I know me, as soon as I go to work outside, it's like, that's where I want to be. So we need to make sure we get everything done with our house and get it to where we want it to be. And we kind of settle with the happy medium there, knowing that we may end up, our goal for the house here is to have either a property for a farm manager or potentially interns, or maybe even turn it into some sort of office space in the future. So we didn't want to make it our dream home, but we wanted to get it to where we could live in here comfortably for a few years, and then hopefully build or buy something that we would be a little more comfortable in. It's about an 1,100 square foot house, and the farm family that had this house before we bought it, the estate that we bought it from, they had 9 people living in this house at one time. Okay. And we've got there's 3 of us now. If we were to have children in the future, Nicole and I are already like, we may want a bigger house just to have another child. So that was a big priority for us. Getting out and trying to get, we we did make some decisions that I look back on now that I'm glad I made. Everything that I bought on any piece of property that we, whether it was my family's farm that we were leasing or other leased land, I didn't put anything in the ground that I couldn't pull up easily. I didn't, all the water line that we put in was above ground.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that we had the end goal of owning our own property. So we said, if we buy this water line, we want to buy it once. We may roll it out here, but we can collect it back up and then transport it to our property and then put it into place there. And so we were able to do that. So, working on getting those semi-permanent systems into place and transporting everything that we had from our other farms to our property was a big part of it. And so, just kind of trying to reclaim the farmstead and the landscape here was a big part of it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then, so talk to us a bit about your enterprises. What are the different enterprises you have on the farm?
So we do 100% grass-fed cattle. We have a cow-calf operation. We also have a stocker operation. And everything that we have is put into our grass-fed beef program and finished for beef for direct marketing to a consumer. We also have a farrow to finish swine program, and it's the same thing. We rarely sell calves or piglets. We typically take everything up to a finished weight and then direct market that product either to a retail consumer or to a wholesale consumer. We've done poultry in the past. We've done, pastured broilers, and we would do a few thousand of those a year. We've done turkeys. We up until recently had a flock of about 1,000 laying hens, and we've really just streamlined and are focusing just on our cattle and hog operations for right now. Expensive inputs have had some weight on our decision with that. But that's also something that when we first started, we were trying to do a little bit of everything, and now focusing on the specific enterprises that we find the most value in and that contribute the most back to the business is our priority here on the farm. That's what we have on our farm. With our meat company, we work with partner farmers under very strict protocol to help us keep up with demand.
Okay.
So we have protocols, and we have a recruitment process where we really find farmers that we feel like have the potential to do a very good job or are already doing a very good job. We're certainly not looking for low-hanging fruit when we go out to find these farmers. We're trying to find ones that excel at what they're doing. Our swine program, or our pork program with our growers, there's a lot of prerequisite qualifications that we have in place that are very important to us, because consistency and quality of the end product is what makes us money. And so we have to have that factored into our production models to make sure that we achieve that. So, having a fixed formulated ration that's approved by either one of our nutritionists or a nutritionist that we approve of, mm-hmm. and that we vet, those are important things. The obvious things, the breeds and a pastured setting and the standards that they have for their animal welfare and their land stewardship are extremely important to us. And those are addressed in our protocol. But our meat company, our goal with that is to really work with farmers that may not have an opportunity to market their own product. And Colfax Creek is a brand for those farmers so that they can continue doing what they do best and paying attention to the quality of the product, the animal welfare, the land stewardship, and just being really great farmers. But we go out and we help to tell their story. We work hand in hand with them to help them continue to farm on their family land and any legacy that they may have. And that's not necessarily, it can be a first generation farmer that's working toward creating a legacy or working toward, trying to farm full time, like Nicole and I have been there. trying to give them opportunity that they can find financial viability through our brand and just farm and not have to worry about marketing and not have to worry about getting the product to the end consumer. We take care of all those things. And it just, that's one of the things that we decided that we were going to do formally. Last year, we formed an LLC for it. We've transparently worked with partner farmers for several years now, but when we decided to form the LLC, it was really a decision of, we're taking the next step to be bigger than just who we are here at our farm. And we're really trying to make bigger change in our food and farming systems. And to do that, you've you have to work collectively, and you have to be able to compete with some larger brands that may be doing some greenwashing, or maybe, trying to come into the market and just beat people on price or whatever it may be. In order for us to be able to compete with them, we have to scale, and we have to focus on efficiencies, and we have to focus on being able to get a consistent quality product in the hands of a chef or a restaurant group or whatever that may be at an affordable price and in a manner that they're already familiar with. So that's something that we decided to do. And, we're putting our head down and really focusing on growing that business and having a larger impact and becoming a larger brand so that we make more honest and meaningful change.
Mm-hmm. All right. So talk about some of those efficiencies that you put in place.
On the meat company side, it's really just, finding, when we first started processing, we would take a couple animals and, you start looking at it and you figure out how much it costs, and you figure out your overhead per pound just to transport the animal, just to have one animal fabricated into either a food service cut or a retail cut. And, if you start looking at that, the more that you're taking at once, obviously, the less it costs. Maybe not on the processing and fabrication side, but on the transport side, it costs a whole lot less to take, 25 or 60 or however many that you're hauling as it does to take, 3 or even 10.
So you're able to go with full trailers then and hit that efficiency.
Yeah. And that's a big thing, keeping on top of your numbers is an extremely important thing in any business. And I think especially in agriculture, especially in 2022 with the way that things cost. And, I feel like it's a pretty fragile market in a lot of ways, but figuring out how many do I need to be hauling for this to be efficient, because you have to, you hear so many different people talk about this in agriculture. You have to take yourself out of the picture, because if something happens and you're out of work for 2 weeks or 2 months, whatever, you got to be able to pay somebody to go do that.
Yeah.
So making sure your numbers are right that is the first step to sustainability. And for us, we can't really, if we just look at hogs, for us to do anything less than, I'll say 25, I would rather do 30 at a time. We really start getting into a point where we're not making margins to be sustainable as a business. So just looking at the advantages of scaling and getting the operation where it needs to be. But there's a lot of different, there's a lot of things that affect that, because just because you can transport them and just because you can process them, you got to worry about all the other logistics and the sales and the order fulfillment and everything else that goes with that. Mm-hmm. So
then what, so you have a fulfillment building that you pack orders in? How does that system work?
We have product that goes out. The best way that works for us is for product to be picked up from our processor and then distributed that way. We also have cold storage here on the farm where we pull and pack orders. And so that could be either food service or retail orders, shipping, whatever it may be. But then we also, we lease. We're fortunate to be in an area where we were able to find some space to be able to lease cold storage as well. And so it's a little bit of a mixed bag when it comes to how that is. The ultimate scenario for us to be in would be to have something here on site, or perhaps maybe a warehouse with cold storage that we lease and have complete control over, to be able to distribute our product out of there, to pull and pack everything, to keep up with rotation and inventory and all the fun things that go with it. But for now, it's a little bit of it's kind of just taking advantage of whatever opportunity you have and making it work.
So, okay. So then you get product processed, and then are people picking up like quarters and halves right from the processor?
We don't really sell too many of those. Most of the stuff that we sell is food service. We sell those whenever we can, but the majority of the product that we sell it's a cased, like you would be looking at a boxed beef or a boxed pork brand of, it's a case of loins or, a case of ground beef or something. And those things are being palletized and just sent out through some small local distributors or our personnel picking that product up and then sending it out and distributing with our own transportation and our own cold storage stuff.
Yeah, gotcha. Hey, thriving farmers, each year we are faced with two important investment decisions. We should be investing in systems that increase productivity and in inputs that develop soil. In December of 2020, I was introduced to a seed, soil, and foliar prebiotic treatment. This product is called Ultra. Ultra is an OMRI-listed prebiotic formula manufactured by AgriGrow. I have personally been running several trials testing Ultra on my farm. I'm impressed. Ultra increased our strawberry yield production by 18%. On a 900 square foot trial, $6 in product cost returned me $868 worth of marketable strawberries. We also had decade-old heirloom corn seed that I have been trying to germinate with no success. In a Hail Mary attempt with my remaining few seeds, I soaked them overnight in a diluted solution of Ultra. They germinated. If you would like to try Ultra or any other AgriGrow product, I believe this would be a worthwhile investment on your farm. Here's the best news yet. AgriGrow has agreed to offer a 10% discount to all thriving farmer listeners. Simply use the coupon code THRIVE when you check out. Again, that is THRIVE for a 10% off discount on your first order. Head to smallfarm.solutions to order today. So let's talk about your team. How have you built your team to be able to scale with this?
Oh man, that is
because how many people do you have total?
We've got, if you count all of our part-timers, and some of those are very part-timers, we've probably got 10 or 11 people.
Okay.
Some of these folks come in and work just as needed. We may get a call from them. They may be busy in their own life and they've been on a part-time basis. We've got an employee now, and she's taken the majority of the summer off. She's getting married. That's a huge season of her life. Yeah. And it's like, do your thing. We're here. She'll call us and we may hear from her in a couple of months, and then she's back on board. And we're some of these folks, again, it's capitalizing on opportunity as it comes along. Uh-huh. So if we find folks that are able to come in and they can contribute for a short amount of time, we take advantage of that, and it's a good reciprocal relationship to where it's good for them. They're compensated well, and, they enjoy what they're doing. And it's good for us in growth, because a lot of these folks will bring their own farming experiences or business experiences in. And, if nothing else, they can help you become more idealistic about certain things and help you maybe shift your viewpoints on the way that you look at a certain enterprise or the logistics within an enterprise. And so there's a lot of advantages to that. The day-to-day stuff is really the day-to-day stuff that we have. There's three of us that just keep the wheels turning here. And, my wife and we have a full-time employee that's here, and I think he'd be here 8 days a week if we'd let him, Sam Barakas. And Sam came to us from a large, pretty substantial size cattle operation in Colorado and Kansas. And so a lot of livestock experience. We were very fortunate being able to turn him loose when he got here. He was extremely comfortable around cattle. Hogs are a little bit different, but learned that super quickly. And, if you're comfortable around animals, that's one of the best things that you can bring to contribute to a livestock operation. we get a lot of folks that come in that, they're great with systems and they're great with mechanics and things like that. But if you don't have that experience with animals, then, that's a huge learning curve. And I think the more that I do this, I think that you can learn more of how to work animals as you go. But part of me is leaning more toward, you either have that or you don't. Some people either have that ability to be able to do it and they can really hone those skills and they're natural at it. I think some people can learn how to do it a little bit better, but they just may not ever be comfortable with it and may not ever have the desire to do it, or just the understanding of, a pig's only a couple of feet off the ground. Their viewpoint's totally different than ours. And the way that you behave with that animal compared to how you behave with, an 800-pound steer is going to be completely different. Those animals work differently. They behave differently and react differently. But we keep some part-timers on and, helping us with bigger projects. But finding employees for us, we found a lot more success in word of mouth from folks that know of us and they've maybe came out and done a couple of projects with us, or they may be a restaurant account that we have, or just friends of ours, and they hear of somebody and, that person, they refer them to us. And we found a lot more success with word of mouth and being patient than trying to post on, Indeed or Monster or any of these other job posting websites. We haven't found much success with that at all. A lot of people think they want to farm, but when you have a mutual friend or a mutual acquaintance that can somewhat vet that person for you and say, this person has experience on a farm, they can come in and they can contribute to the business, then, that's pretty valuable. To get folks off of a website, maybe when you post farming, people think that they're like, oh man, they see green acres, they're going out there and it's sunshine and everything's going to be beautiful all the time, and I'm going to pet a baby pig and all that, and it's quite a shock to them when they get out there and you learn that it's pretty hard work.
Yeah.
So
it's 98 degrees at 8 a.m. and you're, it's raining sweat down your brow. That will wake you up real quick.
Yes, sir.
So you've got the team, talk about, getting that team unified behind the vision. What's your process for that?
So I think that, we talk about consumers, not really being as educated as we would like for them to be, as the farmers looking at consumers that way. But I also think really high potential employees may have that same struggle, right? And even the folks that they may work on any type of farm, and they come in and you're working toward an end goal and really trying to motivate them. I think that a lot of that comes through education of, this is the contrast of what we're doing. This is why it's so much harder for us to do this, but these are the other alternatives. If I speak on animal welfare, when we set up areas for farrowing for our sows, it would be a whole lot easier, perhaps on the farmer. I don't know. I can't speak from experience on this, but I would imagine to be able to just move an animal down a concrete alleyway into a gestation crate and, have an automated feeder. It's probably a whole lot easier on the farmer and a whole lot less labor intensive. But to go and to move a sow and to set her up in her area, there's a lot more invested on it, and it's a lot more labor intensive for us to be able to do those things. But you educate that employee on, hey, this is the alternative. This is how most pork is produced. Or if you look at feedlot cattle, this is how most beef is produced. And they start to see those things, and they start to see that, we're not just trying to do this right here on our small farm. We're really trying to make a larger impact. And they get behind that and they see, wow, I can be a part of something that is making meaningful change. It's at that point, they're going to come to the table with their own ideas and with their own motivation. their own enthusiasm, and you letting them know, hey, if you come in and you do a good job, like we're gonna compensate you to help make positive change on the planet.
Mm-hmm. Now
you get the right people.
Yeah. You get the right people on the team. And I think what you just said there too, is you kind of give them the why behind what you're doing. And I think that really helps.
Yeah.
Now go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, you look at these different generations. That's one of the things I can't remember all of it. I wish I could, but I've been through all these different trainings, especially in the fire service, where they talk about these generations are more motivated by this. And of course it's by individual, but the younger generation that we deal with now, they want to know that they're doing a good job. But the majority of the generation wants to know that their work is meaningful and that they're contributing to something that they can support. And they're not just, making money for the man, if you will. So yeah, if you get the right folks in and do that. And I think it's Jim Collins in his book, Good to Great. He talks about, it's not just getting people on the bus, it's about getting the right people on the bus. And we've certainly learned that over the years.
Yeah. Now, do you offer any sort of like a profit share with your main team folks, or is that something you're still looking to implement at some point, or you don't think that that's something in your future?
Yeah, that's something that we're working on. I think if you do a profit share with your team, then that creates a sense of accountability amongst the entire team. And that's what we look at too, is, this is our business. We're the owners. I guess at the end of the day, we make the ultimate decision. But I mean, if we're out here doing stuff and there's a way for us to improve the things that we're doing, hey, tell us. Let's talk about this, because our success is your success and vice versa. Yeah. But profit sharing really, it creates an opportunity to allow the team to really all rise together and hold each other accountable. And that's somewhat of the culture that we're trying to create, is getting really high performers that come in and again, they're wanting to work towards something bigger than themselves. And so when they look at it, it's not just somebody that's coming in to say, hey, I'm going to milk the clock until whatever time and I'll get my paycheck on whatever day. And, it's just another job. The profit sharing at the end of the day really puts it to where the more money that the business makes, the more money that they walk away with. So when they're looking at that, they develop a different viewpoint and they say, well, this system could be improved and make more money for everybody. Yeah. Well, instead of having folks that come in that just say, hey, well, I get the same either way. If you have it to where they're sharing the profits of the business, then they're going to say, man, I can make more money. Like, we all make more money. It's not just ownership makes more money if we sell more, if we are more efficient, or if this happens, if things go well, then it's great for everybody. How do I contribute to that? And how do I help the person next to me contribute to that? So that the profit sharing is a bigger picture thing of the culture that we're trying to create at Colfax Creek.
Yeah. And let's talk about team meetings. Do you have like daily team meetings, weekly team meetings?
Yes, we do. That could be a 5 or 10 minute morning meeting. That could be a little bit longer meeting where, we're talking about what are we trying to achieve this month? What are we trying to achieve this quarter? Or like, what's our long-term goals? And each of those meetings are different and at different times. And some of them are some of the best meetings that you have. And they may come after work when you're sitting there looking over the farm and just, shooting the breeze for a little bit. You start talking about things that are going on in the operation, and those issues come up organically. If you put it on a calendar, which we do that, we have a day of the week where we, one day we focus on finances, and, one day we're looking at production efficiencies and logistics and all the important things to the business. But a lot of times, some of the best meetings, like I said, they just come up organically, after work, when you're just sitting around and you're talking about the hard day you had, and that person is bringing up and they want to talk about, hey, we did this, or I've been thinking about that. And you kind of start a meeting accidentally, but it ends up being super productive. And, you may not be sitting in an office with a whiteboard, but you're talking about things that are really making change in the business and driving you forward. So even though it may be a different setting, it's certainly more efficient, maybe, or more productive.
Talk a little bit about your marketing, because it sounds like, your focus especially with the meat company, is more to be on the marketing and fulfillment side, and you let other farmers do the actual growing.
Yeah, so we've always done our marketing ourselves for the most part. We've brought some folks in, and we've done a little bit more here recently. But marketing is, we look at marketing in different avenues depending on the target audience. And that's one of the big things you see from my viewpoint. I think there may be some twisting that goes on with some other industry. If you look at different industries, or if you look at different brands or whatever it may be, sometimes people will just tell you whatever you want to hear, and they're just trying to get you money. And the marketing that we're really focused on is telling that story and trying to hit that center spot, that sweet spot that we're looking at of, we're an extremely small company. We're a very small brand. You can come and talk to the owner of the company. My personal cell phone is posted on our website, so I mean, we're certainly, you get that feeling of, I talked to the person who, produced this beef or this pork or these eggs or whatever it may be. But also, you have to look at it differently too, with the approach of, if we're going and talking to, if I'm going to talk to a chef, right, who's over, or a manager over a restaurant group or whatever that may be, those two people are going to hear the truth from me. But they may, if you're giving them that elevator speech, if you will, there's different things that are going to be important to them, right? So you're capitalizing on the opportunity of getting in front of that target audience and letting them know what you're doing, what your capacities are, are you capable of doing these things, and letting them make the decision. I don't believe in fabricating words to try to influence somebody to buy something from you just to tell them that something's happening. Again, that's how I'll tell people, if we're gonna go broke in this business, it may be because we're just gonna be too honest with people. But it is something that, to market, really, that's one of the biggest things that we grapple with, and that's one of the biggest challenges, is trying to figure out, how do you spend your money to market the best? How do you get the best bang for your buck? Is that through Facebook ads? Is that through, hiring somebody to do your social media? Is that through some sort of printed literature, whatever it may be? But it's a big challenge. And a lot of it, honestly, marketing, we invest our marketing, I would say, in developing relationships more so than we do on just trying to get something out there in front of people at this point. Because we are so small, that's something that we can do, is we can still talk to anybody that wants to purchase our product, even if that's through a third party. They can easily access us and talk to us. We can tell them the story. We can tell them who we are. We can tell them everything about us, and they can make a decision based off of that. And if they aren't looking for a farm like us, or if they're not looking for Colfax Creek and what we're doing here, we'll help them find somewhere that they are. And that could change maybe down the road. If we get to a point where we are not able to be in front of that customer all the time, if we, you never know what the future holds. If we were to end up in some sort of grocery chain or something, and then all that person has to make a decision off of is a label in front of them and the claims on that label and maybe a third-party certification, and then we may look at our marketing a little bit differently then at that point. But at this point, we're still small enough that we can directly answer those questions to somebody and talk to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, with that, where are you finding new customers? Is that coming through social media? Is that coming through just pounding the pavement, looking for new purchasers?
Yeah, a lot of that comes through. A lot of it comes through word of mouth, I think. Especially in food service. it seems like just being persistent and trying to keep your name out there, it's a real challenge because you get told no way more than you get told yes.
Mm-hmm.
But once you kind of get in with the right people, and there's no telling who that's going to be, you get in with the right group and they enjoy your product. Well, it's going to be a whole lot more impactful for a chef to hear it from another chef that they respect, or a family to hear it from another family that they are friends with, than it's going to be for you to go try to put something out there in front of them. We get fatigued from, just all the saturation of emails and different marketing and, different sales that we see all the time, that I don't know. And there's people a lot smarter about the subject than I am that could talk about how, this is the way that consumers react to this type of advertising and, however many impressions and all that. But I feel like if you develop good relationships, that's the most important way to pick up new customers or to market yourself, because that person is going to have more weight on their friend or their professional colleague or whatever it may be. They're going to have more weight on their decision and more influence on their purchasing than you're going to be able to do in just, trying to put a Facebook ad out there, trying to, again, have printed rat cards or something at a local co-op maybe.
Are you doing any like referral program, or is it just people love your product and want to share that with a friend?
We've tried some referral programs. Again, I don't know if that goes back to maybe people just being so saturated with do this and you can get that. If you'll tell somebody this or that, we've seen a little bit of success in it, but not too much. I think it's just really focusing on production and quality of product and the consistency of the product. Those are the important things that we have found have brought us more success than trying to get creative and say, hey, we'll give you X amount off if you, refer this many friends, or you'll get this free package. And it's not necessarily worked for us. We haven't really poured a lot of effort into that, but, and I think that those programs could work well and maybe a good opportunity for us even to try. But, the little bit of experimentation that we've done with in the past just it's not something that we've said, man, this is awesome. Let's focus our efforts on this, and it's going to grow our business and our customer base exponentially. I haven't seen that. I think it's just really just somebody just having a good product, and you find these customers that, if they're especially in meat, because it is so much more expensive to buy responsibly produced products than it is to buy something where the production models, their primary focus was just producing a cheaper product. Those sophisticated consumers, I feel like, they find you, they see that you're doing a good job, they want to go tell their friends, they want to bring their friends there. They'll say, they love seeing people that stop shopping at a large, box store for whatever product and go to a local farmer's market and purchase their product there, to a local farm. And so they get excited about it. They bring their friend. That's a success story for them, and they get fired up about it. So I really feel like just doing a good job for us has worked well with just, let's just make sure that they're going to have a great experience with us. And that may cost you a lot of money, and you didn't have a product and you told them that you might, and they pre-ordered it with you, and they're having a family event, and they're going to have 12 people that come over to their house, and you messed up your inventory. So that may mean that you're giving them $50 worth of product for free just to go the extra mile and say, hey, we messed up. We didn't have the inventory. You pre-ordered with us. This is how can we make this right? Take this product for free. That is going to leave a really good impression on that customer too. And they are not going to feel like they owe you anything necessarily, but that's how you, in my experience, the customer service element of it really brings people back. too.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely. What would you say your favorite farm tool is?
I would say my seed drill. My seed drill is
Okay.
probably my favorite one. I like my chainsaw.
Yeah.
On farm tools, those are the two of my favorite things. I think my most important one's probably my cell phone, but it's definitely not my favorite. So
Yeah.
I, I really like seeing improvement in soil health with cover cropping. And so taking a seed drill and, being able to be very precise with it, with, your depth, and just planting things at the right time, at the right moisture level, and seeing what that does for a piece of land, I think that's probably my favorite tool. And the best thing that we have on the farm for overall improvement.
Do you have specific mixes that you're fans of with that?
I like to get creative. I'm learning more and more about it, and I hope I'll look back in 5 years from now, just like I do, and look back on Aaron 5 years ago and say, man, I've learned a lot since then. But I like really trying to go out and learn what your indicator species are, and see what's naturally trying to grow in that area, and then looking at what plants can I put to help maybe convert some of those nutrients, or capture some of those nutrients, so that it's going to improve the overall soil health, right? So if I can find an indicator species that maybe telling me that I'm low on phosphorus levels, and I can plant something that's going to improve that and unlock a lot of those phosphates, then that, to me, that gets me excited, being able to see that improvement. But I don't necessarily have a single mix that I like. I just like trying to find these things and say, hey, what am I trying to do here? Am I focusing on water infiltration and retention? Am I focusing on trying to build up more organic matter? Am I trying to bring in more pollinators? What's my end goal?
Mm-hmm.
Where do I feel like we need the most improvement? And then trying to create a mix that is symbiotic, but is really going to improve the ecosystem and work toward my end goal.
Mm-hmm. So let's say you're going for water infiltration. Is daikon something you would use, or some really super deep rooted crops?
Yeah, I think there's benefits with the daikons and like sunflowers, things that have those deep tap roots are going to be super beneficial. They're going to help to unlock the nutrients that may already be in the soil and help to cycle some of those. But yeah, breaking up, our farm was, I've talked to some of the other farmers around here, and the historical context that we have on our farm is a lot of the land was conventionally tilled, and apparently the guy would do it, didn't really pay attention to moisture in the soil when he would till, and created a lot of compaction because of that. He would till wet soil and go in and then compact it, and it's so being able to plant something like a daikon that's going to go in there and really break that stuff up and improve our water infiltration rates and also the water retention. Those that's a cool thing for us to be able to do, and something that I get excited about. But there's SARE has some really good resources on that. They have a cover crop manual. You could go in. I don't think it costs very much. You may even be able to download it for free. But they have an entire cover crop manual that talks about pretty much anything that you would imagine planting. There's some really good books out there too. Dirt to Soil is a good book.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different resources that are available to figure this stuff out. And, I'm learning more about it every day. I think that's one of the most important things of trying to become successful, is always learning more. So, I certainly wouldn't consider myself an authority on it or an expert, but excited to learn more about it and to continue to improve our land with it.
Yeah, that book you're talking about is Managing Cover Crops Profitably. And if you just type that in and the word SARE, SARE, it is available free as a PDF. So you can download it. I actually downloaded it, printed it off, and three hole punched it and have it in a book, but it's a great book. It is getting a little bit, at least the version that's out here is getting a little bit dated. So I forget what year this was created in, 2012. So it's now 10 years old. And I think what you said right there, dirt to soil, that kind of, I think, catches you up the next 5 or 6 years. Some great resources. I wish they would work on another version, because I know there's a lot of new things happening all the time with this that we need to learn more about. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's an exciting time to be in agriculture with all the things that I feel like we're learning so much as an industry right now, especially with soil science and looking back on previous decades and seeing the way that we did things and the long-term effect. We really have some really good measurements for that now. So we're seeing what we thought may have been really good at the time and how we can improve that now, and then seeing how we can be adding topsoil or increasing water infiltration rates and all these things at a much faster pace than what we once thought. So, but I think the weather patterns and I think so many other elements have changed over the past several years and shifted a little bit. So it makes everything a little bit different in your growing season and your planting season. And so a few more challenges. I agree with you. I think they're due for an update, but I think they're extremely beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. What advice would you give to a new farmer?
Just be ready to work really hard. But I think I would say to really take an open approach to the industry and to try to figure out, what resources you have available to you. What you really want to do, but then what opportunities are there out there in the marketplace that you may be able to capitalize on, and don't try to do too much at once. I look back, if I could tell myself when we started, if I could give myself some advice, I did a couple of things wrong. I feel like I started doing, we were like, we're going to do everything because we wanted to find a way to make money. And we said, the more enterprises we have, the more stuff we'll have for sale, the more money we'll be able to bring in. And, obviously it doesn't really work that way. The more enterprises you have, the more money it's going to cost you. And then, with the limited resource with us, with being time, that's just, you don't have those efficiencies built into those enterprises. And so it doesn't work the way that you would imagine it in your head. So we tried to do too much at once. But a big thing that we did that I would do differently is we would look at a farm and say, well, they're doing this and it works well for them. So we're going to do that same thing here and it's going to work well for us. And that may not be a specific enterprise. It may be housing for a specific enterprise, or it may be just the systems that make up that enterprise. And we didn't really take a step back and look at it and say, well, this would work a lot better for us if we did it this way, if we shifted and, maybe did it a little bit differently, same end result, but the way that we would get there would be a little differently. Again, housing or any of those kind of things. We just looked at it and said, well, somebody else is doing this. It's working for them. They're making money. We're going to do the exact same thing and it should work for us. So my advice would be, don't do too much at once. Figure out what you're good at, what opportunities there are available, and try to capitalize on that in the marketplace, and figure out what systems actually work best for you with the resources that you have available. Just because it works well for somebody else doesn't mean that it's going to work great for you.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing. A lot of people go down, let's say like Polyface Farm, and say, I want to do these 10 by 12 pens. And I just interviewed someone last week for the podcast and said, that was the worst invention in the world. So, figuring out the systems, the processes, and the setups that work for you is definitely, it works for Polyface because they're systems. It doesn't work for other people. I don't know if you've seen the videos of the, it's pasture bird that's now owned by, I think, is it Purdue? And they're basically automated moving tractors that are like, huge, that are traveling across the prairies.
Yeah, that Salatin style tractor is one of the specific things I could talk about that we could have done differently. You know, I was like, man, it's Joel Salatin if he's using this. And, you know, we kind of banged our head against the wall with them for a little bit. And we're like, you know, maybe we could find something that works better for us here.
Yeah.
And it took us a little bit longer to do that than it should have. But again, I was like, you know, the pastured poultry man himself is using these. It's got to be the best system. It's got to be this. And it certainly works well for them. That's why they're using them. But for us, you know, we could have found a better alternative for our settings earlier if we would have just kind of had an unbiased viewpoint of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've seen Mark Baker up, I think he's in Michigan or Wisconsin. He's got a pretty interesting concept that he's working on. And then there's a few other, you know, smaller pens. I mean, I'm obviously always a proponent for scale. So, you know, these people that are using modified like hoop houses, you know, those to me are the kind of the way to go. But again, if you're not doing it that scale, then it makes it hard to, you know, only put 100 birds in a pen that should have 300 birds because you know they're going to get too much exercise and not gain. So, yeah. Well, cool.
It goes back to your numbers too.
Yeah.
That goes back to your numbers too. You know, that's a big thing that we didn't necessarily experience this, but I've seen other farmers who have put themselves in a horrible situation by going out and saying, well, you know, this infrastructure, if we say the Salatin style pens and then we use the larger like hoop structures like you're talking about, well, the hoop structure's a better structure. I'm going to use this because, you know, it's the top shelf or whatever it may be. Item that I can get. You still have to be able to produce enough birds and process those birds and store those and then sell those birds for that to be able to make you money. There's a sweet spot, and you can't just go out and buy an expensive anything to try to make it work if you don't have the way to actually, you know, produce enough within that infrastructure to pay for it. So there's that, like you said, the scales are super important.
Yeah. Yeah. And running your numbers on all those scales too. Because, you know, at some certain scales, certain things become incredibly profitable and certain things become horribly inefficient. And I think that one thing you said earlier about, you know, having a full truck going to the processor with, you know, 22 cows instead of 3, that's huge. That makes a huge difference in depending on the size of the equipment you have. So, well, I really appreciate your time today coming on. It's always fun to chat about the business side and to hear kind of the success you're having down there. Anything else you'd like to share with our audience?
Michael, I really appreciate you having us. You know, we can be found at colfaxcreekfarm.com, Colfax Creek Farm on Facebook and on Instagram. And, you know, we're always here to help anybody that we can. Always excited to learn with other farmers. People can find my contact information on either the website or our social media. I'm always happy to help answer questions or, you know, bounce ideas off of, or, you know, anything that I can do to help another farmer, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah. And you actually guys do ship nationwide, right?
We're shipping regionally right now. We're not doing nationwide. Yeah. We're not shipping nationwide at this point. But
okay, gotcha. Yellow and blue. So it's basically, Missouri, pretty much east and not quite to the northern part of Maine and not quite into, well, teeny bit of Texas.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, awesome. Again, thanks so much for coming on. And yes, it's colfaxcreekfarm.com.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Michael.
Absolutely.
This episode is sponsored by Rimmel Greenhouse Systems, makers of quality greenhouse structures. Whether you're just getting started or buying your 10th tunnel, Rimmel has a structure to fit your needs. I've purchased and grown in Rimmel houses and would recommend them to everyone. So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer Podcast website and leave us a review. That's thrivingfarmerpodcast.com.